Hi, everybody. So this is the introduction for your one of the options for your final exam. This video is going to be kind of just like an overview for you. The PDF for this assignment is very in depth, and one of the first things you're really going to notice is that it's given you a lot of art historical background for the visual language that you are required to use. So we begin kind of looking at the art historical period or movement known as suprematism in Russia, and the PDF kind of explains the importance of this to you. And then we move from there into ideas of constructivism. Constructivism is really what we're focusing on here in terms of a visual design language. And the PDF I prepared for you kind of gives you historical purposes behind constructivism and kind of what it was conceptually seeking to do. So you need to go through, make sure you understand the difference between the suprematism and the constructivism. Okay, so big differences there, but they are informing one another. So this is more, along the lines of where we're heading, which is this very famous design work by Alexander Radchenko. Radchenko really defined design as being about the recognizable and really about the minimal. Most of the constructivist designs that we get from Radchenko and others from the movement are utilizing some very basic visual language elements that are easy to recognize. Typically, they're going to incorporate some type of photographic element. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to incorporate a photographic element in your design. And then they nearly always use very basic colors, mostly red, black, and white, but they also sometimes include like green and red. Very clear depiction of font. And one of the things that you can kind of see is just how the composition is just really important here to establish the successful communication of the design, because the quantity of information incorporated is very minimal. So go through, review Rodchenko, really have a look at Rodchenko's work. You should be able to identify contemporary designs that are influenced by Radchenko. In particular, I think Shepherd Ferry. This is Shepherd Ferry here. This is Shepherd Ferry here. We can really see the link with Shepherd Ferry to Radchenko. And then also, I often think about Franz Ferdinand, which is a, a band. They have used quite a bit of constructivist inspired design in their work as well. This piece is really interesting. It basically says in Russian, books for all people. And so it becomes like an image that is quite famous in terms of, you know, library systems, education, which are really all social programs. Try to see if you can't sort of establish in your head the importance of constructivism to the Russian Revolution, and really make sure you are aware of the difference between Russian constructivist posters and Russian social realist posters. Okay, so prior to the rule of Stalin, uh, communism was much more, historically um, considering or um, utilizing a message of new technology, new ideas, new, in this case, design. And we can see the link between the industrialization of Russia and the incorporation of new technologies into design as a way to spearhead the future relationship between the rise of the proletariat and the rise of the worker via industrialization. So really go through and have a look at that information because it is important to the project's concept, okay? So these are some film posters inspired by Constructivism or made during the period of Constructivism. Again, we're seeing collage elements, actual photographic elements incorporated, very minimal design, very formal design, okay, but yet also very imaginative and creative. So we are thinking about this type of image on the right. Again, we see the utilization of the photograph. We also see the very minimal approach to designing color versus this on the left. What's on the left is kind of like this pictorial um, ideology of post-Stalin Russian propaganda. It's social realism. It's meant to speak to the place of Russian art within the context of the Ancien regime, which was the ancient regime, the history of painting, the history of art in Europe prior to sort of the French Revolution, and then, subsequently the Russian Revolution, and then subsequently, of course, the rise of the worker throughout industrialized Europe. So the Ancien regime, we're really thinking about a very specific type of visual depiction. It's often called easel painting. It is a form of painting that is meant to, um, replicate, in particular, the human form, in particular, historic moments, in such a way that speaks to a hyperrealism that is um, the result of the painter's labor on the canvas versus the utilization of the camera to capture a real life moment in a manner which, in contemporary language, in terms of visual language, is the sort of way that we tend to think about pictorial truth. Often when someone is seeking evidence of a situation, they may say, well, do you have a photograph of that? Or do you have a photo of that? And so the photograph has replaced the painting in contemporary visual language as a form of documentation. So what is important to sort of recognize here is that the return to the formal painting style of social realism was a political choice. It rejected the mechanization of art in the same way that it rejected the mechanization of agriculture per se, as an example. And so when social realism comes about, what we're seeing is um, a switch back in visual depiction of the worker. Now, it is elevating the worker to a status level previously only reserved for rulers and clergy. However, it is sort of speaking to a highly recognized, highly established power structure. So by that I mean that history painting is a relic of the ancien regime, which speaks to a power structure in which a monarch or ruler is given power by God to rule over other people. Now, of course, in post-revolution Russia, the church, the clergy have been eliminated from the discussion, but yet Stalin takes over communist Russia and situates himself in a very similar place of power that we could see someone like uh, Le Royal de Sol, King Louis XIV. And so um, think about that for a second. Think about like what is the advantage then of Stalin saying and the Communist Party saying, you can no longer speak with this new language that you've created. You must speak in this ancient language. Think about that power that is being defined through the limitations of creativity, the limitations of advanced technology, the limitations of the movement towards a more equal and funny enough to use this word, but democratic, or let's exchange the word democratic for proletariat form of art production. To be an easel painter, you must go to school for a very long time. You must study the art of the ancien regime. You must fall into the power structure of ancient Europe. You must understand how that power structure functions. The people are ruled by a single ruler versus pre-Stalin communist ideology through which we would see an emphasis on the worker or the proletariat ruling equally with the equal distribution of resources and wealth. Now, whether or not that was actually the established reality, that's not what we're sort of looking at here. What we're looking at is a conceptual ideology that is influencing visual uh, depictions of the life of a worker, let's say, or the ingenuity of the worker, or the changes in technology that are really potently depicted in both of these images. However, the one that we are sort of looking at is the constructivist uh, poster on the right, because it's doing a lot more interesting design work. The painting on the left is, it's a realist painting. The figure's in an interesting gesture. It depicts a woman. So in many ways, it's an interesting work, but it's not utilizing design the way that the poster on the right is really doing, in such a way that it's dynamic and conveying its message through minimal elements. So it's important to kind of see, and again, I'm definitely not trying to push a certain ideology down your into your concepts here. I'm not trying to force you to see things in a certain way. What I'm trying to do is give you the historical background for the shifts that you can see between social realism, post-Stalin, and constructivism, pre-Stalin.